The Professors is brought to you by Blackboarder.com. They've got everything from pro player articles, competitive prices, podcasts, Pro Tour coverage, videos, and even a point system that we're ready for just posting on the site. We've got new members joining every day, new features being added and updated, so go check out Blackboarder.com today. Previously on The Professors.
Lightning ball! Lightning ball! Lightning ball!
Lots of people on MTG Salvation are persistent on saying this will be the enemy fetch land cycle, and Zendikar will have some sort of enemy-colored shards sub-theme, or be enemy-color focused. Actually, so from a week ago, it turns out that they are in the set. This show is such a horrible source of information. Hello everybody and welcome to yet another episode of The Professors. This week Planechase is here, so we've got all the news on that, Zendikar spoilers, and more. So let's draw. Last weekend, I sat down and slung the cardboard with a true multiplayer crowd in South Jersey. Was it competitive? A little. Did it get kinda stupid when I gave someone double strike so they could bring someone down to 1 life while I remained at 20 only to have the life total switched by Cliffside Market the next turn? Yeah, but was it crazy multiplayer fun? Hell yeah. Thumbs up to Wizards. They really created a format meant for the kitchen table and yet feels special enough to fit into official Magic. Do I want to see more of this? Well, while the schedule for release does seem absurdly cluttered right now with a set every 3 months, dual decks every 6 or so, some limited print run stuff that seems to pop up every 6 months or so in America, and now this, I still would like to see it, but on the note of From the Vault sets, would like to see the price dropped to about 25 or so and have them not be as limited of a print run, as essentially in the case of FTV Exile, the set has become the cost of half the price of a Time Twister and gives the same unfairness feeling not having been around to buy a pack of beta does. As for the actual planes, let's take a look at each deck in no particular order, why you should pick this one, and my personal favorite plane in each. Starting with Metallic Dreams, I don't really like how it plays so slowly. In multiplayer you usually get between 5 and 10 turns to build up, but these decks don't allow for it as much, even when you haven't been picked up on the radar of the 7 other people at the table around turn 8, when you're amassing unnecessarily large amounts of mana and mirror, even if it appears to be totally unnecessary and your opponents know what you're playing, the curiosity factor triggers and you will eventually get attacked. However, if you're trying to build any sort of makeshift affinity deck, Metallic Dreams is fit for you. This deck does have my favorite plane, and what is that plane you ask? Why, it's Gold Meadow, of course. The place with landfall for 3 goat tokens, and what does the Chaos ability do? Why, it gets another goat, of course. But the thing I especially like about this plane deck was the fact that you had the chance to flip up Bant, which, in addition to being my favorite art in the plane deck, has the ability to make a crazy huge goat. Then again, the way I remember it, in a 6-player game you never controlled the plane for more than 1 turn. Onto the Zombie Empire, you see some plenty good zombie synergy going around, and while it doesn't have the most money in the rares, it's always nice to see a Dark Ritual or 2. This deck has the highest potential to curve out and sweep the board, but aggro has never been the most potent in multiplayer, and essentially this deck will be stopped by teamed up forces after taking down a person or 2. As for the planes inside, I love the fact that Fields of Summer is in the zombie deck, but for flavor and the absolute blast of a Chaos ability, Pools of Becoming takes the cake. As for art, it's a bit of an untraditional choice as it's not all that full, but the Dark Barony just hits me as a Grinch Stole Christmas scene gone totally wrong. Speaking of odd references, is that Hogwarts? Oh no, it's just the Academy at Trollaria West. This gets the nicest art in the plane deck, and the grandest ability for what the deck can do when it builds up. Given, because you're not fighting monsters one-on-one, you need to save all your burn spells and Akroma's Vengeance for the later game, but the deck still has enough creatures to act as removal until then. Being that you're in a multiplayer game, I think it's interesting that they made this deck not only worth obviously more money than the other 3 decks, but that it's most likely to surprise. Perhaps this was done to make every other deck go against you. As for Elemental Thunder, the deck isn't the best in terms of money, but has plenty of fantastic fatties and plenty of ways to get there by just beating face in. It takes high risks with 7 mana creatures that could be killed by a Hideous End next turn, but offers trampling 8/8 living hives with swarms of 3/3 tokens on turn 4 or 5. Finally, as for my favorite plane, I've gotta say, I'm in love with the art on Naya. While I like the abilities of Velasvel a little better as it raises your elementals to enormous power, the crazy game states you get when Naya comes early in the game, or even on the first turn when someone's mana flooded but is still rewarded for it and they get, say, a first turn 7/7 Ivy elemental. The game states from this card are crazy, bonkers, and describe everything Planechase ought to be. What? Wait, enemy fetch lands? I wasn't aware they printed $30 bills, but finally, now that the ally fetch lands are rotating out of extended, the enemies are rolling in. This means that A, I was wrong, at least for now. It appears that Wizards is willing to promote ally and enemy colors equally. Perhaps with this sign we could see, who knows, enemy shards, enemy M10 lands coming up. This also breaks the concept that enemy colors are meant to be harder to access but stronger. And another point, this keeps alive decks including Zoo, blue-black fairies, and possibly even red decks that need to get rid of lands, and perhaps help out our Geopede friend here that I expect to see play all over the place, especially with these double lands showing up. Also, Lava Ball Trap gets that much crazier and makes you think twice about playing the fetch land for just the sake of mana fixing in Limited. And even the returning Harrow for acceleration versus the decks playing more than one mountain. As for the rest of the spoilers, we see the first mythic rare that you probably won't pick since Progenitus, Iona, Shield of Emeria. While against many decks in the future standard this card will end the game, I doubt it'll ever actually get to the game. It's nice for EDH and all, but on to blue, we see the notable Mindbreak Trap and a Royal Elemental. First, Mindbreak Trap isn't just a 4-mana counterspell and a counter to Dragonstorm. It also functions as the counter to Volcanic Fallout as, note, it never says the word counter in the text box, and if the blue tempo is right, can be just fine as a counter for 4, although I'm not saying cancel will ever be, and might make Whiplash Trap just good enough for 2 unsummons at 1. As for Royal Elemental, I realize it's 6 mana for only a 3/2 flyer. I realize 1 Volcanic Fallout ends its reign. Note that this is what Mindbreak Trap is for, but it's still a repeating Sower of Temptation that has the ability to end anything with a higher mana cost and totally turn the game around. By just playing a land, you can get a Baneslayer Angel. By playing a fetch land or the increasingly better Terramorphic Expanse, you can get 2 Siege Gang commanders. Expect this card to be around in the slower format coming next month. For black, I once again note 2 cards. First, Blood Tribute. Against the deck with no counterspells, this card will be plenty good, trust me on this. This card with Sanguine Bond in a white-black deck with Baneslayer Angel and some simple removal spells in the deck has the ability to give you the life gain necessary to stall to the late game and get to the point where your gain is their loss. The only issue is fitting a vampire in. However, that's where we come to Vampire Lacerator. Is it just me, or are these 1-drop creatures getting even more ridiculous? While that 1 damage can add up, a 2/2 for 1 is ridiculous, and as it might have the slot in the Sanguine Tribute deck, expect this card all over the place come October. Speaking of all over the place, getting to red, it appears Wizards is trying to make Tribal and Gold built-in bases for these coming sets, as they did with Tribal and M10. This is fantastic, as it gestures towards not having these themes come up over and over and over again. As for red, I'll briefly note Chandra Ablaze, Electropotence, Kuzul Warlord, Murasa Pyromancer, and, as before, Lava Ball Trap. However, Elemental Appeal and Warren Instigator are where it gets crazy. Picture this. First turn Lightning Bolt, second turn Warren Instigator pass. Third turn swing with Warren Instigator and Colossal Might him, take your opponent for 10 and plop out 2 goblins. Then fourth turn Elemental Appeal, swing for the game. This is pretty ridiculous. Not only is this plausible enough that you can pull it off in the Goldfish scenario, but even if they have some defense, you've got those extra 2 goblins the Instigator pulls out to bash in with, and if one of those creatures happens to be a Siege Gang, an extra 5. You probably heard Evan say this, but this card will make an impact on Standard. While for Eternal formats, the fact that it can be spell snared and costs double a Goblin Lackey is an issue, I expect you'll be seeing this there too. As for Standard, testing's being done, and of course he dies to Doomblade, Volcanic Fallout, Day of Judgment, and Path to Exile, but remember, they said the same thing about Termagoyf. While everyone was so delighted to see Lightning Bolt come back this summer, that card cannot win a game by itself, but these cards can win you the game. Finally, in green, we see the expected return of Harrow that lets your Geopede get to be a 7/7 that will show up in ramp decks alongside Oracle of Muldala's ability to get you some 4th turn Rampaging Baloths, but as for the Planeswalkers here, Nissa Ravane, this card I have a problem with. Basically, it comes into play with 3 loyalty counters and you get a 2/3. But the minus factor is that the 2/3 is taking up between 1, but more likely 3 or 4 slots in your deck. The fact that Nissa's Chosen comes back is fine and dandy, but the fact that Nissa has to specifically reference the card is crazy annoying. When a card references another card and is only remotely playable and constructed when you're playing said other card, as in the case of the Heralds, this is what I call the Yu-Gi-Oh! Ultimatum. It's one of the worst possible ways that Wizards can tell us they're running out of design space. This compares to Yu-Gi-Oh's hero things. Honestly, I forgot the names. But anyway, point is, in order to play one card, you always had to play the other one. Sure, it was worse when one card was like an enchantment that was even more useless on its own, but Nissa's Chosen is unfortunately a great example. As for the last card this week, Scythe Tiger, well, I can't really decide if this is plain power creep or not. On the one hand, as it appears many decks come Zendikar will be playing 2 to 4 more lands, the creature is just fine card advantage. On the other hand, the card is basically a 3/2 with Shroud for 1 if you're on the play, and while it does start you on the back pedal, still has protection from spot removal and is still a 2-mana rate creature. So until next time when we see our extended zoo staples, this is Anthony Palmerio. Tapped out for now, but we'll on tap soon.